Hello, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am Jerry Krentz, the Associate Director of Communications for the Duke Endowment and the Fellowship Advisor. Joining me are Todd Dalrymple, our second-year fellow, Mika Sales, a program officer with the healthcare program area, Phil Redman, a program officer in the child care program area, Christina Strader, our first-year fellow, and Susan McConnell, our Director of Human Resources. We're here to share information about the Duke Endowment and the Fellowship Program, and we're glad you are joining us. We'll address your specific questions at the end, but please feel free to submit them throughout the program. The picture you're going to see is of James B. Duke, the prominent tobacco and electric power industrialist who established the Duke Endowment in 1924. His goal was to improve lives and communities in North Carolina and South Carolina by nurturing children, promoting health, educating minds, and enriching spirits. Once he made his fortune in business, Mr. Duke wanted to give back to the community that had supported him, so he directed the endowment's resources to North Carolina and South Carolina. After establishing his foundation, Mr. Duke made an initial gift of $40 million. He died just 10 months later, but he left an additional $67 million to the endowment. Mr. Duke was very specific in his indenture about how the Duke Endowment would meet the needs of Carolinians. This commitment led to the establishment of 4 program areas at the endowment. Child care, which includes funding for children's homes and for initiatives to support children who are victims of domestic violence, abuse, and neglect. Health care, funding for hospitals and initiatives such as patient safety, access to care, and childhood obesity. Higher education, specifically Duke University, Davidson College, Furman University, and Johnson C. Smith University. And rural United Methodist churches, funding for the churches themselves and also for initiatives such as clergy health and support of retired ministers. Within these program areas, the endowment focuses on making strategic long-term grants to address root causes of issues and widespread challenges. We often work with nonprofits to test promising approaches. The endowment has a director of evaluation who helps us and our grantees identify desired results of projects and then measure the impact of these projects. Over the years, the endowment has made significant investments in the Carolinas, as the next slide indicates. We have awarded more than $3 billion in grants since 1924. Grant making has grown from decade to decade, from 45,000 in 1925 to more than 109 million last year. Today, the endowment has about $3 billion in assets, making it one of the top 20 U.S. private foundations. Our offices are in Charlotte, not Durham. We have 38 employees, including employees in all 4 grant-making areas, as well as in IT, finance, communications, and human resources. Now, I'll turn things over to Todd to talk specifically about the fellowship program.
Thank you, Jerry. The fellowship program began in 2005, and I joined the endowment last July as the 7th fellow. And Christina Strader, who's pictured with me on the slide, is the first-year fellow on the call, and she is the 8th fellow. There are 2 primary goals for the fellowship. One is to cultivate future nonprofit and philanthropic leaders, and the other is to encourage creative thinking and bring new perspective to the endowment. The program lasts for 2 years as fellows spend 1 grant cycle in each of our 4 program areas, as mentioned earlier, child care, health care, higher education, and rural church, each lasting approximately 6 months. Typically, the fellow starts in the higher education program area, then rotates to the rural church program area, and starting in their 2nd year, the fellow rotates through childcare and healthcare. The commitment typically begins and ends in the summer, and we are seeking a July 15th to August 1st start date for our next fellow. As stated before, fellows rotate through each of the 4 grant-making areas. There, the fellows assist with site visits to current and potential grantees. The endowment has a long-standing tradition of face-to-face contact with our beneficiaries, so a fair amount of travel across the Carolinas is required as a part of this job. Fellows also participate in projects and research for all of the program areas. Projects largely depend on the needs of the program areas and are also guided by the interests of the fellow. Often fellows will help convene meetings with grantees or other statewide organizations or attend a meeting on behalf of the program area they are rotating through. Over time, we have developed a structured process to help the program areas identify projects and important meetings for the fellow. As an example, during her education rotation, Christina is researching the current and future implications of massive open online courses and the impact that it will have on our the 4 schools that the Duke Endowment supports. And recently, as a part of my healthcare rotation, I was able to help plan a breakout session for our small rural hospitals conference around one of our grants to some of those hospitals around energy audits and upgrades. Fellows also complete a capstone project while at the endowment. This signature project can span the entire 2 years of the fellowship. It can take any variety of forms and is always personally interesting to the fellow and additive to the endowment. Fellows aren't expected to come to the endowment with a specific project in mind. Rather, we develop our project as we consult with staff here. Projects should fall within our interests and also, again, meet the priorities of the program area. Some of the projects that have been completed by fellows have included a multifaceted intervention program to improve literacy in rural church communities, another an HPV school vaccination site program, and a joint project in healthcare and rural church that focused on Latino health outreach in the Wilmington area. And yet another capstone was a research project that helped to plan and scale up an evidence-based program incredible years into the state of South Carolina. As a part of their professional development, fellows also attend state and regional conferences in addition to other collaborative programming related to our work. There is also the opportunity to participate in leadership positions in statewide philanthropic organizations such as the North Carolina Network of Grantmakers. And finally, fellows receive performance feedback and coaching from management staff throughout our time at the endowment. And this helps prepare us for leadership positions in nonprofit and philanthropic organizations following the completion of our fellowship. With that said, I'm now going to turn it over to Mika Sales, Program Officer in Healthcare, to detail the eligibility requirements and desired qualifications for a fellow.
Thank you, Todd. So as stated in the indenture, the Duke Endowment was established to improve and support organizations in North and South Carolina. Therefore, our fellowship program follows a very similar model. To be eligible, applicants must fall into one of 2 categories. They must be a current or past resident of North Carolina or South Carolina, or a recent graduate of a college or university in the Carolinas. The pictures we have seen so far are of actual endowment staff and past fellows, and pictured here are our first 3 fellows. The endowment is looking for individuals with an undergraduate degree who also have at least 1 to 2 years of work experience or a graduate degree. We will consider individuals who are just completing their undergraduate degree if they have significant work or internship experience. Now that we have had 8 fellows, we have found that some work experience or graduate school training is beneficial to both the fellow and the endowment, particularly as fellows need to be able to navigate the various activities they are responsible for. We will consider undergraduates should they have significant work or internship experience. In addition to strong academics, which can come from any discipline, we look for applicants with a service-oriented background, students who are connected to their communities and community issues in some way. We have had a variety of academic and work backgrounds that you can read more about on our Past Fellows page on the endowment website. We often get asked what our fellowship alumni have gone on to do. After completing her fellowship, Keisha Payton has held 2 manager positions at Citizen Schools, a nonprofit that focuses on after-school programs. She has said that her experiences at the endowment positioned her well for both roles. Margaret Dillard, our second fellow, served as an advancement associate at Atlanta Girls Middle School, which is located in Atlanta, Georgia, and she now serves as the Associate Director of Alumni Giving at Duke University. Our third fellow, pictured above, Elizabeth Ireland, has continued her education through a joint degree program at Duke University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in pursuit of a master's degree in public policy and a law degree. Our fourth fellow, Leah Bartley, is now working with the National Implementation Research Network, an organization that assists nonprofit organizations in scaling up successful intervention programs. She too is pursuing further education and achieving a PhD in social work at the University of Maryland. Heather Husky, our fifth fellow, managed the student retention project at Johnson C. Smith University, one of our educational beneficiaries. She is now pursuing a master's in education degree from the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania and is the assistant director at the Center for Minority Serving Institutions. And our most recent fellow, Chantel Carles, is pursuing a Juris Doctorate in Master of Arts in English at Duke University. So as you can see, there are a variety of potential opportunities after the fellowship, and most of our fellows go on to work in philanthropy or for nonprofit organizations. And now I'll turn it over to Phil to talk more about some of the ideal characteristics we're looking for.
Thank you, Mika. We want to receive applications from all types of backgrounds and disciplines, but there are several characteristics we look for. The fellowship position is very independent, so we look for applicants who are self-directed and motivated and who are flexible and able to multitask. We like to see people who are willing to try something new and bring innovative and fresh thinking to the table. Challenge old or current ideas is strongly encouraged. Critical thinking skills to analyze, interpret grant applications, policy briefs, and publish research are also important. As mentioned, a portion of each rotation is site visits. So not only are good written and oral communication skills needed when presenting to our board, but also in meeting with grantees. Fellows should have the ability to communicate with people of all walks of life and from diverse backgrounds. We like to say that fellows need to be comfortable in their skin because they will be interacting with church leaders, clinicians, PhDs, or even high school graduates. We do not expect applicants to have experiences in all 4 grant-making areas, but we'd like to see that an applicant has the knowledge of or experience in at least one area. As you can see, we have a competitive salary and benefits package. In particular, it's worth noting the endowment pays the full cost of an employee's medical insurance, and we provide a stipend for moving. So now I'll turn it over to Christina to talk about the application process.
Our application is currently on our website under the overview section of the fellowship page. Each year, we receive somewhere between 75 and 100 applications. The deadline for this year's application is Monday, January 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We ask that all candidates submit their applications online, along with 2 references and your resume. There will be detailed instructions on the application itself. All of these dates are on the website, but we want to share some important dates with you now should you be chosen as a finalist. We will conduct between 12 and 15 phone interviews on January 24th, and then we will invite 6 to 8 semifinalists to a lunch in Charlotte on February 5th and 6th. The top 3 candidates will come to the endowment offices on February 18th to participate in a panel interview and to have lunch with our management staff. We will also have makeup days for inclement weather that you can see listed on the PowerPoint slide. Our final decisions will be made by March. So that's it. We hope this presentation has given you a better idea of what the fellowship program is and what we are looking for in our applicants, and some more detail on our application and selection process. Here's our contact information. Please feel free to contact Todd or me with any questions. In the meantime, please use your control panel if you have any questions. If you do type in your question, we can read it and be able to answer it for you.
So we have a question here asking how the endowment measures impact outcomes and best practices within our program area. And that's a great question. We have applications that grantees submit to each one of our program areas for funding, and within each application is a question about the results that grant hopes to accomplish. So part of the answer to the question is that we measure the outcomes that the grantees have identified. And then also, in each program area, we fund things called evidence-based programs or evidence-based models. Those models have prescribed outcomes that they measure that research has demonstrated are produced by the particular model. So we track those outcomes as well. And then if we initiate internally a particular grant where we're testing some new idea or some innovative practice or program, then we'll also be evaluating, often by a third-party evaluator, the outcomes that model is purporting to produce. We have an internal endowment staff who assist with and help oversee all of our evaluation work, and each program area measures outcomes as they go along.
We also had another question. This is Susan in Human Resources. We have another question about the start date and whether or not the start date is flexible. Can a fellow start prior to the end of the summer? We actually do say in our materials that we want the fellow to start by August 1st. And if a fellow wanted to start a couple of weeks before then, that's fine. I think our hope and our goal is to make sure a fellow is on board by August 1st, because we have found that that gives the fellow plenty of time in the first rotation to spend adequate time in the higher education program area. So sometime between July 15th and August 1st is the ideal start date.
We've had two questions about being based in Charlotte, and that is correct. The fellowship, the fellow is based in Charlotte, here in our office in Charlotte. And there is extensive travel throughout North Carolina and throughout South Carolina, but we believe it's important to be here in the office because of the collaborative opportunities that are here, and so it is a requirement that the fellow live in Charlotte.
And then there was also a follow-up to that question about the amount of travel that's involved. And for the fellow, it really depends on where in the grant-making cycle we are talking about. So for about a 2-month period, a program area is conducting site visits, and those are typically day trips to different sites throughout the Carolinas. And during that time of year, the travel is a little bit heavier. And during some other times around when applications are due, you'll have more time in Charlotte working on research projects or other tasks that you might be working on. So the travel truly ebbs and flows for the fellow. And overnight travel is also required sometimes, and this is particularly true for conferences that are held outside of Charlotte.
There's also a question about whether fellows can take classes that are outside the realm of the nonprofit area. And this is actually something that we're taking a look at now. What we plan to emphasize more is for fellows to take classes that relate to work in the foundation world.
And there are several organizations that we're looking at that offer courses such as how to analyze grant applications, how to analyze financial statements of grantees. And so we actually are shifting more specifically in the not-for-profit arena to courses related to work at a foundation. And obviously those courses would complement the work that the fellow does here at the endowment during the 2 years.
We've also received a question about interaction of the fellows with the Duke Endowment staff. And so first I'd like to say that the fellows are considered part of our staff while they're here for the 2 years. And so they interact with us just through day-to-day activities and through all staff activities like staff meetings and staff activities that happen outside of the workplace as well. And as fellows rotate through each of the program areas, they are embedded into that program team. So for example, Todd is rotating through healthcare right now, which is the team that I work on. And this summer he joined our team in July and will be exiting per se in December. But during that time we've had a staff retreat which he assisted with helping to provide materials for. We were researching the ways in which other foundations were communicating some of their work around particular program areas, and he participated in that research and led a lot of that research, as well as helped to do a review of how we are communicating our work right now. And he's continuing to work, they continued to work, as we mentioned, going on site visits, and those reports back to the staff from site visits are incorporated into developing our board materials for our trustee meetings that happen twice a year as well. So there's lots of opportunities for staff and fellows to interact and for them to contribute greatly to our day-to-day activities and to any future endeavors that we are looking into at the endowment.
Another question that we received was that when you're planning your capstone project, does the fellow build a team around the project, or is it more individual? The fellow has the opportunity to build a team who they think best fits the project. It doesn't mean that team will necessarily just be in the department or program area that the project is within. Oftentimes they'll overlap, and the fellow can utilize the skills of multiple officers within the endowment, which is probably one of the great benefits of the capstone project itself, is the collaboration that takes place amongst the staff to help the fellows pursue their capstone project.
And I would just add, as I've begun my capstone project, I've been able to assemble an advisory team, and they are very generous in terms of offering to meet on roughly a monthly basis just to support me, provide direction, connect me with resources inside and outside the foundation to help move my project to completion. However, of course, the actual design and work part of the capstone project is the responsibility of the fellow, which really makes that project a meaningful and rich learning experience for the fellow. So that independence, in addition to the advisory process, is also an important part of our growth.
We had a question. If you have more than 2 years of work experience but just recently completed a master's degree, would you still be eligible to apply? And the answer is yes. Just to be clear, this program is for emerging leaders in philanthropy regardless of age.
Just to add to that, I did have 3 years of work experience prior to coming to the endowment.
If anyone has any more questions, again, feel free to type them on your control panel. But if not, then thank you all for joining this webinar. This recording will be posted on our website should you choose to or want to look over the questions again. We encourage you to apply if, after all you've heard this afternoon, resonates with you. Again, if you have questions about the program, Todd and I are happy to answer them because, as you can probably tell, our fellows do a lot of work on the fellowship program itself.
Yeah, and on that note, Christina, we actually just got another question in for us. So this question just asked about our favorite part of the fellowship experience thus far. And at least for me, going through my third rotation to this point, although we receive direction from the program areas, there's also a certain degree of autonomy that the fellow receives that allows us to bring our own interests to the endowment in addition to the sort of formal priorities of the program area. And there's a real opportunity to bring whatever background from work experience or graduate school that you have and apply that and be additive to the endowment in those program areas in that way. And I guess as a component of the job is in addition to the sort of the flexibility and the responsibility that's granted to us is the amount of face-to-face interaction that we have with our grantees. As mentioned earlier, staff here at the endowment take pride in working directly with our beneficiaries, and that's one of the advantages of just being based in the Carolinas. And so we are invited to go on as many site visits as would be interesting or useful to us as possible. And of course, I would be surprised if all of those on this call had experience in each of the 4 program areas. For me, with a background in education, entering into the healthcare world and the rural church program area just granted me exposure on the ground that I'm not sure in any other program that I would have had access to. So in addition to the substantive work opportunities we have and the projects that we're able to complete, the fellowship has been just a tremendous learning experience. And I think there is something new to learn just about the field with each rotation with which you go through.
And I'll agree with Todd. The variety of people you get to meet in the community, I think, is a great advantage of a regional foundation. Most often, I found when I was looking into the world of philanthropy, you don't get the one-on-one face time like Todd and I have the opportunity to have, and I would say that's probably one of the critical components.
We had another question about travel costs, mileage and hotels for site visits and conferences. Are wondering if those are covered by the fellowship, and yes, they are. All of your travel expenses would be covered. So again, if you have any other questions about the program, Todd and Christina are happy to answer them, and we appreciate your interest and your time this afternoon. We wish you the best of luck.